"I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence." That single line turned a wild idea into one of the most rewatchable adventures of the 2000s. National Treasure works because it blends real history, real landmarks, and just enough truth to make the wildest fiction feel believable. This video is your guided investigation, separating fact from movie myth, uncovering production secrets, and revealing details that changed how visitors actually behave in real museums. Some of what you discover here might reshape how you see this film, and it all starts with a room that never actually existed. Number 1. The Rotunda was completely fake. Every frame inside the National Archives looks absolutely real, but none of it was. The production team built the entire Rotunda from scratch on a soundstage, carefully matching the dimensions, lighting, and materials of the actual building. Filming near the real Declaration of Independence was never an option due to strict preservation rules and security protocols that made close-up camera work impossible. The recreation allowed filmmakers total creative freedom. Camera angles that would be restricted in the real Rotunda became possible, and the crew could control every element of the environment. Multiple takes, dramatic lighting shifts, and tight close-ups of actors interacting with the document were all achievable because nothing on set was genuinely at risk. Even the glass casing was engineered to eliminate reflections that would have plagued a real location shoot. The effort paid off in ways most viewers never realized. Audiences left theaters genuinely believing the cast had been granted rare access to one of America's most protected artifacts. That seamless illusion wasn't luck. It was the result of obsessive set design that treated accuracy as non-negotiable. The fake room became more cinematic than the real one could ever be. Number 2. Security rewrites changed the plot. A heist built around breaking into one of the most guarded buildings in America needed to feel possible, but the world changed before cameras ever rolled. Post-9/11 security realities made earlier versions of the break-in concept feel completely unrealistic. What once seemed like a clever fictional plan suddenly clashed with a new reality audiences understood firsthand. Screenwriters had to acknowledge that the public's perception of institutional security had shifted permanently. Writers went back to the drawing board, redesigning the theft sequence to respect heightened public awareness while still delivering excitement. The challenge was delicate. The plan had to feel smart enough to root for, but grounded enough that viewers wouldn't dismiss it outright. Every step of the heist was restructured to acknowledge tighter security without sacrificing entertainment. The rewrites didn't just fix a plot hole, they reshaped the entire opening act. Pacing shifted, character introductions were reworked, and the tone became more methodical. What could have felt dated instead became one of the film's strongest stretches, precisely because the writers treated real-world tension as a storytelling tool rather than an obstacle. Number 3. Riley was almost a tiny role. The character audiences remember most fondly almost didn't exist in any meaningful way. Riley Poole was originally written as a minor supporting figure, a tech-savvy sidekick with limited screen time and little personality beyond his function. The role was designed to serve the plot, not steal scenes. Early drafts gave him barely a handful of lines with no room for comedic timing or emotional depth. Everything changed during casting. Once the creative team saw what the right performer brought to the part, they recognized an opportunity to expand Riley into something far more valuable. His humor became the pressure valve the script desperately needed, giving audiences breathing room between dense historical exposition and rapid-fire puzzle solving. That expansion transformed the entire film's dynamic. Riley became the audience's stand-in, the one asking the obvious questions and reacting the way viewers would. Without him decoding clues in plain language, the movie risked losing casual viewers in layers of historical detail. What started as a footnote in the script became one of the adventure's most essential ingredients. Number 4. The Declaration prop was obsessive. Creating a convincing replica of one of the most famous documents in history required more than a good printer. The prop department crafted multiple versions of the Declaration, each tailored for specific filming needs. Stunt copies could survive action sequences, while hero props were designed to withstand extreme close-ups in high definition without revealing a single flaw. Every version included painstaking detail, period-accurate stains, natural fold lines, and subtle aging marks that matched the real document's known imperfections. The team studied reference photography extensively, ensuring that each replica told the same visual story of centuries of careful preservation and unavoidable wear. Even the texture of the parchment was matched to feel authentic when actors physically handled it on camera. The obsession with authenticity served a critical purpose. Audiences needed to believe that what they saw on screen was either the real artifact or something dangerously close to it. If the prop looked even slightly fake during a key moment, the entire premise collapses. That level of craft is invisible when done right, and the film never once breaks the illusion. Number 5. The reflecting pool had no water. One of Washington, D.C.'s most recognizable landmarks appeared on screen exactly as audiences expected, but the reality behind the shot was completely different. The reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial was actually drained during the production's filming schedule. What viewers see as a calm, iconic body of water was never physically there. Digital artists stepped in to restore the pool's signature look in post-production. The visual effects work was so seamless that virtually no one has ever questioned the shot. It remains one of those invisible corrections that audiences walk right past, never suspecting that technology quietly replaced what nature and timing couldn't provide. This single detail reveals how modern filmmaking often operates beneath the surface. The most effective visual effects aren't the spectacular explosions or fantasy creatures. They're the corrections nobody notices. Filling a drained pool with digital water kept the scene's emotional weight intact without a single viewer ever sensing the trick behind it. It's a quiet reminder that the best effects are the ones audiences were never meant to find. Number 6. The map idea started at Disney. Long before cameras rolled or a cast was assembled, the core concept already existed inside Disney's development offices. The idea of a hidden treasure map on the back of the Declaration of Independence wasn't invented during a late-night rewrite. It was the original spark that launched the entire project. Executives saw potential in the premise and began searching for writers who could build a believable world around it. Multiple screenwriters cycled through the project over the years, each attempting to crack the story's structure. The challenge was always the same. How do you turn an outlandish idea into something audiences would accept as plausible? The premise needed historical grounding, a compelling lead character, and a chain of clues that felt logical rather than random. Finding that balance took far longer than anyone initially expected, and several drafts were abandoned entirely. What makes this origin remarkable is how little the central concept changed throughout development. The treasure map on the Declaration survived every draft, every creative overhaul, and every leadership shift at the studio. In an industry where original ideas are routinely rewritten beyond recognition, this one held firm from beginning to end. The final film is built on the exact same foundation that was pitched years before production ever began. Number 7. Real landmarks, fake interiors. Audiences watching the adventure unfold across America's most iconic locations had every reason to believe the crew filmed everywhere they showed. Exterior shots at landmarks like the National Archives, the Lincoln Memorial, and Independence Hall were captured on location, giving the movie an unmistakable sense of authenticity that soundstages alone could never replicate. These real-world backdrops gave the story a weight that purely fabricated settings would struggle to match. But stepping inside those buildings was a different story entirely. Nearly every interior scene was constructed on controlled sets where filmmakers could manage lighting, camera placement, and safety without restriction. Real institutions couldn't risk the wear, disruption, or liability that comes with a full film crew operating inside fragile historical spaces. The solution was elegant: shoot the outside for credibility, then build the inside for creative freedom. The blend worked so effectively that most viewers assumed full access had been granted to every location. That belief is a testament to how carefully the production matched set designs to their real-world counterparts. Every hallway, every display case, and every room carried enough detail to maintain the illusion. The line between location footage and studio work became completely invisible. Number 8. Silence Do Good was real. One of the cleverest moments in the film draws directly from actual history, and most viewers never realize it. Benjamin Franklin really did write under the pen name Silence Do Good, submitting anonymous letters to his brother's newspaper as a teenager. The letters were witty, sharp, and surprisingly mature for someone so young, and they became genuinely popular with readers at the time. The movie takes that real foundation and reshapes it into a puzzle element. The way the clue appears and functions on screen is fictional, but the historical roots are entirely accurate. Writers used Franklin's real biography as a launching point, weaving documented facts into the treasure hunt's logic so seamlessly that fiction and reality became difficult to separate. It's one of those rare moments where the movie actually teaches real history while entertaining. This approach became one of the film's defining strengths. By anchoring invented clues to verifiable history, every puzzle felt more credible than pure fiction would allow. Audiences who researched the Silence Do Good letters after watching discovered that the movie hadn't fabricated the reference. It had simply repurposed it. That discovery deepened trust in the story and made even the wildest leaps feel grounded in something real. Number 9. The score maps the journey. Behind every great adventure film sits a soundtrack doing work most audiences never consciously register. The composer crafted distinct musical themes for specific locations throughout the story, creating an invisible emotional guide that shifts as the characters move from one landmark to the next. Each setting carries its own tonal identity within the score, reinforcing the uniqueness of every stop along the treasure hunt. This technique isn't random, it's a deliberate structural choice. When the action moves to a new city or a new historical site, the music subtly transitions with it. Audiences feel the change without recognizing why. The score essentially functions as a musical travel map, signaling progress through the treasure hunt and reinforcing the sense that every location matters independently within the larger journey. The result is a soundtrack that does far more than fill silence. It anchors the pacing, builds anticipation before reveals, and creates emotional continuity between scenes that might otherwise feel disconnected. Viewers who revisit the film with this knowledge often notice how precisely the music tracks the narrative's geography. It's one of those invisible production choices that elevates the entire experience without ever drawing attention to itself. Number 10. The dollar bill clue stretch. Every symbol shown on the dollar bill during the film is genuinely present on real currency, but the meanings assigned to them are a different story entirely. The movie takes authentic imagery, like the unfinished pyramid and the eye above it, and reinterprets them as directional clues pointing toward hidden treasure. It's a creative leap that sounds convincing in context, but doesn't align with any official explanation of their purpose. The real symbolism behind these designs has been documented extensively by historians and the US government alike. Their actual meanings relate to national ideals like strength, vigilance, and the country's ongoing growth, not secret maps or buried fortunes. The film deliberately blurred that line, presenting real symbols through a fictional lens that made audiences question what they thought they knew. That creative decision had lasting consequences beyond the theater. The movie fueled widespread conspiracy discussions about hidden messages in American currency, and some of those conversations persist to this day. What started as a clever plot device tapped into a genuine public fascination with secret codes and government mysteries. The film didn't invent those theories, but it gave them a mainstream spotlight they had never enjoyed before. Number 11. The ship explosion was a showcase. Early in the adventure, a frozen ship called the Charlotte meets a fiery end, and the production treated that moment as one of the film's signature set pieces. The destruction wasn't just a plot point to move characters forward. It was designed as a spectacle meant to announce the movie's scale and ambition within the first act, letting audiences know immediately that this story wouldn't hold back on visual thrills. The sequence received significant attention during behind-the-scenes production coverage, with filmmakers highlighting the practical effects work and coordination required to pull it off convincingly. The explosion needed to feel massive yet controlled, delivering blockbuster energy without overshadowing the puzzle-driven story that would follow. Striking that balance required careful choreography between the stunt team, visual effects artists, and the director's vision for tone. The final result became one of the most replayed moments in early promotional material. Beyond spectacle, the Charlotte's destruction serves an essential narrative purpose. It establishes real stakes before the treasure hunt truly begins, making clear that danger isn't theoretical, it's immediate and physical. That early commitment to consequences grounds the rest of the film in a way that pure puzzle solving alone couldn't achieve. Audiences leave that scene understanding that the adventure carries genuine risk, and that tension never fully lets go. Number 12. The church ending uses real history. The climactic final act unfolds in a location that actually exists, and that choice was entirely deliberate. The burial site featured in the movie's resolution is rooted in genuine history, lending the ending an air of credibility that a purely invented setting would have struggled to deliver. Filmmakers understood that placing the finale somewhere real would make the discovery feel earned rather than convenient. The hidden chamber beneath the site, however, is pure fiction. No secret underground vault filled with ancient treasure exists below the real location, but by surrounding that invention with authentic architecture and documented historical context, the movie blurs the boundary between what's real and what's imagined. The audience is already so deep into the journey that questioning the chamber's existence feels almost unnecessary in the moment. This strategy mirrors a pattern the film uses throughout its entire runtime. Anchor fiction in just enough truth to make skepticism difficult. Real surroundings sell the fantasy, and authentic details create a foundation sturdy enough to support even the most outlandish conclusions. The ending works not because viewers believe hidden treasure actually exists there, but because the movie made them want to believe it could. That emotional pull is what separates a forgettable finale from a memorable one. Number 13. Deleted scenes change motives. The version audiences saw in theaters wasn't the only cut of the story that existed. Several scenes were removed before the final release, and some of them contained crucial character information that would have reshaped how viewers understood key decisions. Motivations that seem slightly unclear in the theatrical version were originally explained in greater detail through dialogue and quieter character moments that never made it to the big screen. These deleted sequences add depth to relationships and decision-making throughout the plot. Characters who appear to act on instinct in the final cut were actually given more reasoning in earlier versions, with scenes that showed internal conflict, hesitation, and personal stakes beyond the treasure itself. The material existed, it simply didn't survive the editing room's demand for momentum. The theatrical cut prioritized pacing above all else, and that trade-off shaped the film audiences know today. Removing those scenes kept the adventure moving at a relentless speed, but it came at the cost of emotional nuance. Viewers who seek out the deleted material often find that their interpretation of certain characters shifts noticeably. What seemed like impulsive behavior suddenly looks far more calculated when the missing context is restored. Number 14. The Internet Preview Experiment. Before the film reached theaters, Disney made an unusual decision for the time, releasing an extended preview online to build early awareness. In an era when most studios relied almost exclusively on television spots and theatrical trailers, putting substantial footage on the internet felt like a genuine gamble. The strategy targeted younger, more digitally connected audiences who were already spending significant time online rather than watching traditional broadcast television. The move paid off quickly. Early buzz spread through forums, fan sites, and email chains in ways that traditional marketing couldn't replicate. Viewers who watched the extended preview became invested in the premise before ever buying a ticket, and many shared the footage with friends who might not have noticed the film otherwise. The campaign generated organic word of mouth that money alone couldn't purchase. Looking back, the decision reads as remarkably forward-thinking. What felt experimental in the early 2000s became standard practice within just a few years, as studios recognized the internet's power to reach audiences directly. Disney's willingness to test that approach with this film placed them ahead of an industry-wide shift that would soon transform how every major release was marketed to the public. Number 15. Test audiences changed the ending. The conclusion audiences know today wasn't the original plan. An earlier version of the ending played differently during test screenings, and viewer reactions made it clear that something wasn't working. The alternate resolution introduced ambiguity that confused rather than satisfied, leaving test audiences uncertain about what had actually been accomplished by the final scene. Studio executives and filmmakers reviewed the feedback carefully and decided that clarity needed to win over complexity. The ending was reworked to deliver a more straightforward resolution, one where the stakes, the outcome, and the emotional payoff were unmistakable. The revised version removed lingering questions and replaced them with a sense of earned closure that left audiences feeling genuinely rewarded for the journey. That decision reflects a broader reality of blockbuster filmmaking. The audience's experience often shapes the final product as much as the filmmaker's original vision. Test screenings exist precisely because what works on paper doesn't always translate to a room full of viewers. In this case, simplifying the ending didn't weaken the story. It strengthened it by ensuring that the satisfaction of the treasure's discovery matched the effort audiences had invested in following every clue along the way. Number 16. The bonus doc explains everything. Hidden among the special features on the home release sits a documentary that most casual viewers never bothered to watch, and that's a shame. The extended behind-the-scenes feature dives deep into how the filmmakers designed every puzzle, constructed every clue chain, and researched the historical foundations that hold the story together. It treats the movie less like entertainment and more like an educational project built on layers of real investigation. The documentary gives writers and researchers space to explain the logic behind each step of the treasure hunt. Clues that feel like leaps of faith on screen are broken down into deliberate creative decisions, each rooted in historical plausibility rather than random invention. Filmmakers discuss the process of selecting which real facts to bend and which to preserve, revealing a level of care that the fast-paced theatrical experience doesn't allow audiences to fully appreciate. Several historians consulted during production also appear, offering their own perspective on how accurately the film handled its source material. For viewers who already enjoyed the film, the documentary transforms a fun adventure into something surprisingly intellectual. It reframes the entire production as a project that took historical accuracy seriously even when crafting fiction. The extra material doesn't just explain how the movie was made, it deepens respect for the creative choices that shaped it. What seems like a simple popcorn thriller reveals itself as something far more thoughtful beneath the surface. Number 17. Disney sold a real treasure hunt. The marketing campaign didn't just promote a movie, it invited audiences to participate in one. Disney designed the entire promotional strategy around the idea that viewers could solve clues themselves, mirroring the experience the characters have on screen. Print ads, online content, and promotional events all carried puzzle elements that encouraged active engagement rather than passive consumption. It was a campaign designed to make people feel like treasure hunters before they even sat down in a theater. This wasn't accidental branding, it was a calculated extension of the film's identity. By framing the marketing as an interactive mystery, Disney ensured that potential audiences felt personally connected to the story before they ever entered a theater. The campaign blurred the line between watching an adventure and living one, creating an emotional investment that traditional trailers and posters rarely achieve on their own. The strategy worked because it matched the movie's spirit perfectly. A film about solving clues deserved a campaign built on the same principle, and Disney recognized that alignment early. Audiences didn't just hear about the treasure hunt, they experienced a version of it firsthand. That level of synergy between content and marketing is rare, and it played a meaningful role in turning the release into a cultural event rather than just another opening weekend. Number 18. Geography makes no sense. Anyone who maps the journey taken throughout the film will notice something the story hopes audiences never question. The distances don't add up. Characters travel between major cities at speeds that would require teleportation rather than any realistic form of transportation. What should take hours or even days happens in what feels like minutes of screen time, with no acknowledgement of the gap. Entire stretches of the East Coast are crossed as casually as walking to the next room. This was a conscious creative decision rather than an oversight. Filmmakers prioritized narrative momentum over geographical accuracy, understanding that slowing down to show realistic travel would drain the adventure of its urgency. The treasure hunt needed to feel like a race, and pausing for logical transit times would have shattered that rhythm. Speed mattered more than a map that made sense. Most viewers never notice the impossibility because the pacing does its job so effectively. The story moves quickly enough that there's no time to calculate distances or question timelines before the next clue demands attention. It's one of those filmmaking shortcuts that only becomes visible when someone deliberately looks for it. The adventure works precisely because it refuses to let reality slow it down, trusting that excitement will always outrun a calculator. Number 19. The sleeper hit performance. Opening weekend numbers told only part of the story. While the film performed respectably in its first few days, it was the weeks that followed that truly defined its commercial success. Audiences didn't just show up once, families returned multiple times, and word of mouth drove a steady stream of new viewers who had initially overlooked the release. The box office curve refused to drop the way most blockbusters do after their debut, holding remarkably steady through the holiday season. That sustained performance caught the attention of studio executives who had been cautiously optimistic at best. The film wasn't built on a pre-existing franchise or a guaranteed audience. It had to earn every ticket through quality and reputation alone. Repeat viewings from families who treated it as a shared experience became the engine that powered its long theatrical run, pushing final numbers well beyond initial projections. By the end of its theatrical window, the adventure had earned over $300 million worldwide. The financial endurance sent a clear message to Disney. This property had franchise potential. A film that audiences voluntarily revisit doesn't come along often, and the studio recognized the value in that loyalty. The steady earnings didn't just recoup the budget, they built the confidence necessary to greenlight a sequel. What began as a modestly anticipated adventure proved that the right story could build its own audience over time without relying on spectacle alone. Number 20. There is writing on the back. One of the film's most famous plot points, hidden text on the back of the Declaration of Independence, sounds like pure Hollywood invention, but it's actually rooted in fact. The real Declaration genuinely has writing on its reverse side. It's not a treasure map or a coded message, but a simple label that reads, Original Declaration of Independence, dated 4th July, 1776. The notation was added for identification purposes during a period when the document was frequently rolled up for storage and transport between locations. The movie took that mundane detail and transformed it into the foundation of an entire adventure. By replacing a practical label with an invisible treasure map revealed by specific conditions, the writers turned a footnote of preservation history into the story's most iconic element. It's a masterful example of how a single real fact can be reimagined into something far more dramatic without losing its connection to truth entirely. That one creative leap became the engine driving the whole plot forward, and the detail audiences remember most vividly. The lasting impact of that creative decision is still felt today. Countless viewers walked out of theaters believing the back of the Declaration held genuine secrets, and many went searching for the truth afterward. What they found was far less exciting than fiction suggested, but the fact that real writing actually exists on the back gave the movie just enough credibility to keep the legend alive. Reality may be mundane, but it gave fiction the perfect starting point. Number 21. Museums still get questions. 2 decades after the film's release, staff at the National Archives still field questions from visitors who want to know about hidden maps. The movie's premise embedded itself so deeply into popular culture that real institutions have had to develop responses to fiction-inspired curiosity. Tour guides and museum employees regularly explain that no invisible treasure map exists on the back of the Declaration, and some visitors are genuinely disappointed to hear it. The frequency of these questions hasn't diminished with time, and staff have learned to expect them from visitors of all ages. The phenomenon speaks to the power of confident storytelling. When a film presents its fiction with enough historical accuracy and visual conviction, audiences absorb invented details as though they were real. The movie didn't just entertain, it created a false memory that millions of people carried with them into actual historical spaces. That kind of cultural imprint goes far beyond what most blockbusters achieve, regardless of their box office performance. What makes this legacy particularly remarkable is that the questions haven't faded with time. New generations discover the film through streaming and home video, and the cycle begins again. Children who watch the adventure today arrive at museums with the same curiosity that their parents carried 20 years earlier. The movie accidentally became an engine of historical engagement, not because it taught accurate history, but because it made people curious enough to seek it out for themselves. In a way, the fiction accomplished exactly what a good history lesson should. It made people want to learn more. Number 22. The DVD menu was a puzzle. When the home release arrived, Disney didn't settle for a standard menu screen with chapter selections and bonus features. Instead, they turned the entire DVD interface into an interactive experience, embedding hidden clues and coded messages throughout the navigation. Viewers who explored beyond the obvious options discovered puzzles that extended the treasure hunt from the screen into their own living rooms. It was a rare instance where the packaging itself became part of the entertainment, rewarding fans who took the time to dig deeper. The design reflected the same philosophy that drove the film's marketing campaign: active participation over passive consumption. Rather than simply rewatching the movie, audiences were invited to decode messages and uncover hidden content buried within the disc's architecture. It transformed a routine home viewing into something that felt like a personal extension of the adventure, rewarding curiosity in ways that a standard release never could. The interactive DVD represented a perfect marriage between content and format. A treasure hunt movie deserved a home release that felt like one, and Disney delivered exactly that. The experience couldn't be replicated through streaming or digital downloads, making the physical disc uniquely valuable for fans who wanted more than just the film itself. It remains one of the more creative home video presentations from that era, and collectors still regard it as a standout release worth holding on to. In an age where physical media is rapidly disappearing, that kind of thoughtful design feels even more special in hindsight. Number 23. The ending was meant as closure. In an industry obsessed with franchise potential, the filmmakers made a deliberate choice to end the story completely. The treasure is found, the conflict is resolved, and every major character arc reaches a satisfying conclusion. There are no dangling threads, no mysterious final shots, and no whispered hints at a larger mythology waiting to be explored. The credits roll on a story that asked a question and answered it fully. In an era when studios increasingly treated every release as the first chapter of a larger saga, that kind of restraint was genuinely refreshing. That commitment to closure was intentional from the earliest stages of development. Writers and producers agreed that the audience deserved a complete experience, one that didn't hold satisfaction hostage in exchange for sequel tickets. The ending rewards viewers for their investment by delivering exactly what the adventure promised from the opening scene. Everything the characters work toward is achieved, and nothing essential is left unresolved. The irony is that this self-contained approach may have actually helped the sequel get made. Audiences who felt fully satisfied were more willing to return for a new adventure because the first one had respected their time. A cliffhanger ending might have generated short-term curiosity, but the genuine closure created long-term goodwill. People came back not because they needed answers, they came back because the first journey had been worth taking from beginning to end. Number 24. Inspired by classic adventures. The director never hid the fact that older treasure hunt films shaped the movie's DNA. Classic adventure stories from previous decades provided a structural blueprint that guided everything from pacing to character dynamics. The familiar rhythm of discovery, danger, and revelation was borrowed directly from a tradition that audiences already loved, even if they couldn't name the specific films that established it. That inherited framework gave the story an instant sense of reliability, as though the audience already knew the journey would be worth following. What made this version feel fresh was the setting. Instead of exotic jungles or ancient foreign ruins, the adventure unfolded across American landmarks and homegrown history. That single shift transformed a well-worn genre formula into something that felt distinctly new. Audiences recognized the adventure structure instinctively, but the patriotic backdrop gave it an identity that separated it from every predecessor it drew inspiration from. The balance between familiar and original became the film's secret weapon. Viewers who grew up on classic adventure cinema felt immediately at home, while younger audiences experienced the thrill of a treasure hunt for the first time through an American lens. By honoring the genre's traditions without being enslaved by them, the movie carved out its own space in a crowded field. It felt like a tribute and an evolution at the same time, classic enough to feel timeless, modern enough to feel urgent. That duality is precisely why it still holds up when so many imitators have already been forgotten. Number 25. A meme that never died. Long after the credits rolled and the box office totals were counted, the movie achieved something most blockbusters never manage. It became part of everyday language. The premise of stealing the Declaration of Independence evolved into a cultural punchline that transcended the film itself. People who have never watched a single frame still recognize the concept and the famous line associated with it. That kind of penetration into mainstream consciousness is something studios spend millions trying to engineer. Yet it happened here almost entirely on its own. The joke spread organically across social media platforms, comment sections, and casual conversation for years. Every time a national debate, a political scandal, or a historical discussion surfaces online, someone inevitably references the film's central premise as a humorous response. The line became shorthand for absurdly ambitious plans, and its versatility ensured it never grew stale. New context kept refreshing the joke long after its origin faded from active memory for many people. What's remarkable is the longevity. Most movie references have a shelf life measured in months, fading once the next blockbuster replaces them in the cultural conversation. This one endured for over 2 decades and shows no sign of disappearing. The film earned a rare kind of immortality, not through awards or critical prestige, but through a single idea so perfectly absurd that the internet adopted it permanently. Few films can claim that their most lasting legacy is a joke that still lands every single time. It's the kind of cultural staying power that no marketing budget could ever buy, and no sequel could ever replace. National Treasure was never meant to be a history lesson, but it became one anyway. The film blurred the line between fact and fiction so effectively that real museums still answer questions invented by a screenplay. It turned American landmarks into adventure settings, transformed a mundane label on the back of a document into a legendary mystery, and made an entire generation curious about history they might never have explored otherwise. That accidental legacy may be the most impressive thing the movie ever achieved. What keeps the movie alive isn't just nostalgia, it's the craft behind every detail. From obsessive prop work and invisible visual effects to a marketing campaign that turned viewers into participants, every layer of the production was built to serve one goal: making the unbelievable feel real. 2 decades later, that commitment still holds up, and new audiences continue to discover why the adventure works as well today as it did on opening night. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more secrets behind your favorite films. Drop a comment and tell us which secret surprised you the most, or which movie myth you believed was real all along.